Well, what's going on, y'all? Thanks for tuning in today. Thank you for being here. How many of you actually enjoy thought exercises? Things, scenarios, stories, whether they be fictional or real, that is kind of brought up to you that really make you ponder, take a step back, and just reflect on your life or decisions that you've made, priorities, things that you would consider more important or less important, whether it's your life or somebody else's life that you might know. That is essentially what a thought exercise is. And I want to have us go through one. I saw a clip on social media a while back, which I think is a good thought exercise to kind of see where each and every one of us land. So, especially for those of us that are Christians, I think this is crucial to see what our immediate answer is. For those of us that aren't Christians, I think this is still a good barometer, a good check to see whether or not you still stand by your decisions, stand by your choices that you've made, or if perhaps maybe you need to make a change. So, with all of that said, I hope you're ready to dive into this together and just unpack this and walk through this exercise. So, with all of that said, cue the intro. Funny side note before we actually kick off this thought exercise. I don't know how many of you have actually seen the movie or are at least familiar with the movie Inception, but the premise of that movie is like you never really knew what was real because it was always about somebody dreaming, and then it would be a dream within a dream within a dream. So you never really knew what was real or not. If that was just somebody dreaming and then they would wake up, or if it was actually happening. And so in this case, the clip that I'm going to show us, that we're going to kind of react to or kind of just talk about, is of a pastor reacting or watching another clip. So it's just kind of funny. It's like layered in that sense as well. But I'm going to do things a little bit differently here. The pastor that is reacting to this clip, his name is Josh Howerton, and he is the lead pastor of Lake Point Church in Dallas, Texas. But I typically will show you the entire clip and then come back at the end and react to it. I'm going to interrupt in the middle of the clip before he kind of responds and kind of gives his thoughts and all of this stuff. Because I want to first set up the thought. I want you all to hear the question, hear the answers from the people in that video, and then I'm going to come back and give you all a chance to kind of lock in your answers, and then I'll play the rest of the clip. So with that said, let's kick things off and check this out.
Who comes first, your mom, your daughter, or your wife? Give me mom,
Daughter, wife.
daughter, wife.
Wife's replaceable.
Okay. Oh wow, replaceable. Okay. Which really?
So this is like hypothetical when I'm like later in life in my 30s when I have all three of those.
Okay.
So I would say at that point I'd probably pick like daughter, then wife, then mom. But I love my mom a lot. I love my mom.
Respect. What about you? How you feeling?
Daughter, if I'm on good terms with my wife, and then
Okay.
mom. But if not, then mom in the middle.
Who comes first? Mom, daughter, wife. Interesting question. Interesting thought exercise, right? So lock in your answers and figure out in what order would you put them. Would you match up with the first guy or the second guy or perhaps maybe the third guy? And you might say to yourself, well, the second guy and the third guy had the same answer. Their order was the same. True, but the third guy had this caveat that he put in there. So I'll address all of this stuff and kind of unpack this together, but lock in your answers, and here goes the rest of the clip.
Okay, God bless these guys, but 0 for 3. The biblical answer is wife, daughter, mom for two controversial but very clear reasons. Number one, your wife comes before your daughter because the Bible never says that you are one flesh with your daughter, even though your daughter literally came from your flesh. But it does say that a man becomes one flesh with his wife. Ironically, putting your daughter before your wife actually hurts your daughter because the best way to be a good parent is to be a good spouse with a great marriage to raise them under. And number two, your wife comes before your mom because the Bible says when a man gets married, he shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. So like when my kids get married, they are leaving my family, starting a new family, and then I become extended family. If you don't leave, you can't really cleave. Moms are priceless, daughters are treasures, but godly men go wife, daughter, mom.
Now, how many of you actually had the correct order according to what Josh explained before I actually played his explanation and his reaction? Wife, daughter, mom. Now, it's interesting, right? Because when you listen to that clip, the first part of that clip, the guys and their explanation, the first guy, he said, wife replaceable. That is so sad. That is so sad. When you're already in that mindset, that mental state of thinking, oh, the wife's replaceable. If I have issues, I'll just get rid of her. That is unfortunate, because that means that you are already half foot out the door. You're not even invested into that relationship, into that marriage. Wife replaceable? And then, as admirable as the second guy said, daughter, wife, mom, when you put your daughter or your child ahead of your spouse, that is how issues start to rise up, because the spouse feels neglected, because all your energy goes to your child. So you got nothing left for your spouse. And I mean, there's many issues of why divorce happens and problems happen, financial issues, things like that. But that is one driving force of fights and divorces, is because you neglect your spouse. The kid takes priority, and it's just not supposed to be that way. The spouse is supposed to be number one, after God is supposed to be number one, and then, so spouse, child, and then your parent. That is the order it's supposed to be in. And then the third guy, he says, if I'm on good terms with my wife, then my wife, and then mom. But if I'm not, then mom in the middle. It is interesting when you look at these people that are in marriages or in relationships, and this is their outlook and this is their view. And some of you might be watching and thinking to yourself, well, why is it important? Why does it have to be wife, daughter, mom? Why does it have to be like that? Why is the Bible the one that calls the shots? Because God created us. He created human beings. He created marriage. Marriage is supposed to be a picture, a reflection of Christ and the church. So marriage is biblical. Marriage comes from the Bible. So if you are trying to be married and you're not reflecting the correct order, the correct design for how marriage is supposed to be, it is going against the Bible, which is ultimately wrong. When you put those priorities in different places than where they're supposed to be, you start having issues. So again, I hope this was a really great and interesting thought exercise. I hope this helped some of you, if not everybody, to just walk this out and evaluate a good barometer and check a pulse on where things are at in your life. And perhaps, maybe if they're not in the correct order, you need to make some changes. So thank you so much for watching this week. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here each and every week. So stay safe out there, and until next week, God bless.